Come on a journey with a cinephile.
Wake up, sucker. We're thieves and we're bad guys. That's exactly what we are.
We was getting too big for our britches.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What have you done to its eyes?
I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Biddy well, little brother. Biddy well.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 288. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., and I'm recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So this is going to be my Voyage to the Fives, episode number 7. So two featured reviews I have here is going to be The Crime of Dr. Crespi. This is from 1935. I was able to find this online and gave it a go. And then I'm going to be pairing this up with Death of a Unicorn. This is the one with horror comedy, Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, this being from A24, so I was quite intrigued to learn. You hear my son in the background there. So those will be the two featured reviews. This one is definitely looking at the corruption of humanity in kind of a couple different ways there. Then my Voyage to the Fives rewatch from 1985 is The Stuff. I gave a screener watch to The Last Cabin, and then I gave a 2025 wide release rewatch of Drained, and then I have a couple documentaries. The first is going to be Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and then I also gave another screener watch, a documentary called The Darkside of Society. This one kind of delving a little bit behind the scenes of the film Society. So that's all I have here, I think, for this intro, except saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And for my first mini review is going to be The Stuff. This is from 1985. Written and directed by Larry Cohen, stars Michael Moriarty, Andrea Marcovici, and Garrett Morris. This is a B-horror comedy, dark comedy, sci-fi film that is from the United States. Currently sitting on a 5.9 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: a delicious, mysterious goo that oozes from the earth is marketed as the newest dessert sensation, but the tasty treat rots more than the teeth with unexpected consequences. So this is one that my sister and I grew up with. I know my father had it on VHS. Now, I remember it being terrifying when I was growing up. Now, I believe the last time I saw this one would have been when I was living alone in Parma, Ohio, that is. And I wasn't necessarily high on it back then, but I was always very critical of a lot of things, so my ratings were more harsh. And it's one that most people have enjoyed. Knowing more about it through life experiences and just watching just more things in general, I was curious to give this one a revisit, as I'm doing it now here as a Voyage to the Fives watch, as I was saying. So where I'm going to then begin is that I thought it was cheesy last time I saw this. It is, but that's by design. What we're getting here is a satire of the health food craze of the 1980s. It's almost mocking the advertising campaigns for things that don't fully fit or even make sense. The executives will still pay for it. There's also a commentary here about how dirty capitalism is and the corners that are cut to make money. So where I'm going to start then would be with the substance that is also the title of the film. It clicked while watching it this time around that in the beginning we see a group of guys who are miners. The stuff is bubbling out of the ground. We never truly learn what it is, but it's alive and moving. It's a fungus of sorts. It feels like it's inspired by the Blob from the 50s. Instead of looking like a gelatin, this is more like a marshmallow fluff type situation. The guys who see it first taste it, realize that it's great, and then it takes off from there. It's a fun idea to use a treat like this, since technically it is all natural. And shifting from there, I wanted to discuss the advertising of the material. The 1980s saw an uptick in spending there. Now, things that were flashier were done, and we get to see that here. Examples of this were like the runway models and bikinis and furs with the stuff. Does it explain the product or really even show outside of them eating it? No, but it doesn't matter. This dessert is selling off the shelves. We then get one later with Abe Vigoda and the lady from the Wendy's commercial who used to ask, "Where's the beef?" She uses that phrase here to sub in the word for the stuff. Now, this is a fun, creative way of mocking the industry. So next I want to talk about rival companies. We're made aware from this that the people doing the stuff are an upstart business that's taking over. They want to know what other companies want to know what's in the product so they can replicate it. If that's not possible, then they want to sabotage him. That's where we end up getting our main character here of David Mo Rutherford, and he is portrayed by Moriarty. Now, what's interesting with him is that he goes about learning what he can, and he's just kind of a comedic type guy who just plays his role so well. This leads him to meet somebody like Vickers, who's portrayed by Danny Aiello, who's a former FDA agent, and he has left the job since he approved this product. There's something off about him as he's talked to. Now, this brings Mo to Nicole, who is actually the head of marketing for the stuff. She's portrayed by Marco Vici. Now, the people who are in charge of the company for this stuff, and even finding odd cities that feel like shells to hide information, I love the corruption and the dark side of capitalism that's being explored here. Then to shift gears, let's go over to the filmmaking aspects. What I also love here is the practical effects of bringing stuff to life. Does it look good? No, but they had to do it without CGI. There are a variety of things they do, like pushing it through holes and like spraying it and kind of just letting it move around on its own with just kind of different forms of how they created it. I appreciated this. They also do some good things here with seeing how people are, after this parasite leaves their body. We see this later, which kind of reminiscent of Jonestown. I'll just leave that there. Cinematography was good. The soundtrack and design were fitting for what was needed. If I have a negative here, this feels like it's edited in a manic type way at times. It kind of just jumped from set piece to set piece. So I'll tell that to be acting performances. Moriarty is great here. He's over the top. He's suave, but there are also some conveniences that happen with some things. It's more of an issue with the writing. It feels like Moriarty is in on the joke, which is fun. Marco Vici was solid in her role. I'm glad they gave her some depth and even a redemption arc. Morris is hilarious here as Chocolate Chip Charlie. He's a rival company who his family sold his business out from underneath him. Paul Sorvino is in this too. He plays his role so stoic, but the things he says are outrageous. And I also give credit here to Scott Bloom. He was a teenager who ends up kind of getting tossed in with this group. I like the cameos by Aiello, Brooke Adams, Vigoda, Patrick Dempsey. And it didn't even click for that last one until I was actually writing my review and saw that he was credited in this. Now, we also have some people that I didn't realize that were in here, like Rutanya Alda and Paul's daughter of Mira Sorvino. Now, the actors are hamming it up, but it fits the tone. So, in conclusion, this one terrified me as a child, and I can appreciate it more as an adult. Cohen is such an interesting filmmaker. He has a unique vision to write films that make sense. This one is a little bit manic, but still fun. I love Moriarty's character of Mo. Making a satire about the health food craze, advertising the dark side of capitalism is fun. There are some good practical effects here, even if they all don't look great. This is just made well with that cinematography framing to hide most of the seams. Just roughly know what you're kind of getting into, have a chuckle, and just see how creepy the stuff is. So my rating here for the stuff, 7 out of 10. And then up next is going to be a screener I got to see of The Last Cabin from 2025, co-written and directed by Brendan Rudnicki, who also did this with Kellen Rudnicki. This stars Isabella Bobadilla, Brendan Gaucher, and Tanner Kongdara. Now, this is from, actually, the sub-genres here, or the genres in general, are going to be found footage, psychological, slasher, survival, horror action thriller film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say between a 2 and like a 3-star movie over there. With our synopsis being, trapped in a remote cabin, a film crew finds themselves stalked by 3 masked people who know the isolated woods and their every move. This is one I got a chance to see thanks to Shirley from Entertainment Squad, who sent over the screener. So this one was picked up by the Horror Collective. Both of these groups tend to put out things that I enjoy, so I was intrigued to check this out. What I figured coming in was that this was going to be a low-budget horror film to help me kind of round out and beefing up my 2025 list. What I didn't realize is that I've heard of members of this production crew, DBS Films, on my friend's podcast, A Nightclub, which I've also been on. I also recognize one of the stars' name, who is in a Discord chat group that I'm in as well with The Nightclub, and kind of just interesting that crossover there. So let me commend this first. I knew what it had to work with and didn't waste any time setting the stage, then getting us over to this group that we're following. There are issues that I have with things later on, but on a whole, this is solid, low-budget effort. Now that set up, let me delve more into what we're getting here. This is a combination of slasher and home invasion. Our trio that goes out to this cabin don't know it as well as the people that are stalking them, and I'll go ahead and say that we have Hope, who's portrayed by Bobadilla, and then we also have with her Sean, portrayed by Kongdara, and then there's Ben by Gaucher. So this has vibes of the strangers with them being trapped inside and our killers surrounding them. Building on that idea is as well is that Hope discovers something in one of the rooms where the cabin isn't as secure as she thought. This plays with the idea that they've created this safe space, but there are holes with the killers that can get in. This keeps the tension rising and prevents slipping into a lull. So I have a slight negative that I want to discuss here. I think this is great to building from this opening shot of our group being stuck. My problem is that even though this runs about 70 minutes, my interest wanes when they flee into the woods to survive. It's the next logical step. Something else is that there isn't safety in the house. My problem is that it's too dark in the woods. They're filming this with handheld cameras, so it's difficult to kind of follow what is happening. I'm a big fan of found footage. As long as you can make it believable why they continue to film, I don't nitpick, which I do think they do here. So like I said, I just got lost at times while they're in the woods. It doesn't ruin it, but it just doesn't fully work for me though either. I'm going to shift gears and talk about the acting performances. I've seen similar films where the acting wasn't as solid as what we get here. I like our main trio. Bobadilla seems like this woman who so badly wants to work in the industry. She doesn't want to ruin her chance, and it puts stress on her. It is from there that she takes blame as they're attacked. Where her character ends up makes sense. Gaucher and Kongdara were solid as the two who are trapped with her. I like Newmark, and it would be Benjamin L. Newmark, as well as Kashmir Monique as the others who end up there at this house as well. That helps provide more bodies. We also have Dylan Devane, Tegan Crossley, and Rudnicki. That would be Kellen Rudnicki. All work as the people under the mask. The acting brings the characters to life for a movie like this, for sure, which is all you can really ask for. All that's left that I'm going to do here would be fall into filmmaking aspects. I've already said that I have my issues with this being found footage. It doesn't ruin it, though. I actually like making a slasher home invasion film, as it feels like we're with them. And it just doesn't work for me that they went into the woods. The framing and shakiness of the camera made it difficult to follow. That's probably my bigger issue there. What impressed me, though, were the effects. I love the clown masks. Those are terrifying. They don't show a lot of blood and gore, but what we do looks good. This is where the cinematography comes back as a positive for me. They hid the seams well. Other than that, the solid things were done with the sound design to add tension and build the needed atmosphere. So in conclusion, this is one that worked where most of what they did for me. This has a limited budget, but they used it well. I like the filming slasher home invasion style of found footage. This puts us right there with our characters, so that we try to survive the night. The acting is solid in bringing the characters to life. They're also distinct enough. I also thought the practical effects were good. My only issue here is that they flee into the woods. It was just hard to follow and see things. Other than that, I recommend this if you like lower budget films in this type of vein and everything like that, because I think it does work well. So my rating here for The Last Cabin, 6 out of 10. And this one should be on VOD now if it isn't already. And the next one I'm going to go very brief with, because I've actually already covered it earlier this year, and this would have been on episode 274, which featured Helter Skelter and Presence. So if you'd like to hear a bit more, I would direct you over to that episode. But this one is Drained. This is technically from 2024, again, it's why I released this year. This is written and co-directed by Peter Styliano, something like that, and Sean Cronin, who helped co-direct this. The stars Radaria Aldianton, Madalena Belarus Ion, and Craig Conway. This is a dark romance vampire horror film. Shouldn't come as a surprise, this actually shows you they're vampires in the very beginning, but this one is currently sitting on a 4.5 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3-star over there. This is from the United Kingdom, and this synopsis is: unemployed artist Thomas is captivated by alluring Rhea, who conceals her vampire nature, and their intense affair takes a sinister turn as Thomas becomes gravely ill. So Aldington plays Thomas, and then Ion will be playing Rhea here. So like I said, I'm going to go brief, as I've already kind of covered this. I'll direct over that other episode, but so what I like here is that we have a different take on the vampire lore. We have this guy who is struggling, but there's actually some deeper stuff about his character that I thought actually helps to make things work here, where he lives with his mother, but she is kind of struggling since her husband passed away, his father. She's portrayed by Angela Dixon, so she ends up seeing John, who is an exterminator, portrayed by Conway. I also think that we do some interesting allegories here to addiction and infatuation. I originally thought that he was, as Thomas was enjoying Rhea feeding on him, but there actually might be a little bit more to it. I also like the lore they put into how to become become a vampire in this one, a little bit different from what we normally got. I think the acting is solid here. I think Aldington and Ian definitely carry the way here. Everybody else kind of pushes them to where they end up. And we also get to see that Rhea uses her sexuality as kind of like a weapon, but we also see she's a little bit aloof and kind of rude at times. I think that actually works with what they kind of needed to do here. The cinematography and practical effects were solid. There's some CGI that I had some issues with, and this runs a little bit too long. So this one, I think it's a solid independent vampire film that's from the United Kingdom that is definitely worth the watch. Maybe not going to be a end-of-year list contender and everything like that. If anything, it's going to be, closer down to the end of the top 25, but still one I think is actually does some interesting things that I would recommend, giving a watch to. And after both times seeing it, my rating has stayed the same at a 7 out of 10, and that just solidified it for me. Now let's jump in as the first of my 2 documentaries here. The first one, Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser, and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. This is from 2015. It was directed by Kevin McDonough, and then this is written between Nicholas Helmsley and Gary Smart. This features Doug Bradley, Kenneth Cranham, and Andrew Robinson. This is a documentary that is from the United Kingdom, currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being a documentary uncovering the history and the making of Clive Barker's Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2. So one from 1987, the other one from 1988. And this is one that I've been wanting to see for a while. What held me back is that, according to Letterboxd, this one is supposed to be running almost 8 hours long. So I did not watch that one. Actually, IMDb also confirms that. I watched one that was probably closer to like 3.5 hours. That's over on Screambox. So I decided to just pull the trigger, watch what I could while working, treating it like a podcast, and look down if something was interesting and needed to see. Mostly just to kind of list it as a time passed. So this is broken into 2 parts. The first covering the original film, and then we have the second part covering the sequel. These are my favorite type of documentaries, I will say that. When you have films like this that are classics. We get interviews from actors like Doug Bradley, Claire Higgins, and Imogen Boorman, as well as having like William Hope. He is in there, and then we also have like Simon Bamford, who is one of the other Cenobites, and Barbie Wilde. Just kind of hearing these people and hearing their stories are just something that's very rich and just kind of makes my enjoyment of the movie even better. So we also get some other people here that get introduced and talked to, like the director of the sequel, Tony Randall, Christopher Young, who also did the soundtrack. He did some great stuff there. We also get to listen to some of the other people behind the scenes, like Peter Atkins, Christopher Figg, Rory Fellows, Robin Vigian, something like that, Bob Keane. So just a lot of different people giving a lot of there's just a wealth of knowledge here, and that's great. I love hearing the behind the scenes aspects, as it can help bring a certain creature or makeup to life, or even just a story element, the difficulties of bringing these scenes to life, or the challenges or how they could film them. There's this rich lore here thanks to the writer and director of the original as well, with Clive Barker, as he wrote the original novella, which I have read, The Hellbound Heart. These are the type of docs that I appreciate because it makes me like these movies even more. Now, something else here is that this is also a well-made doc. We are hearing stories and they edit in footage to visually show us. This could be like hearing the makeup team talk about how they did something, and then we see the final product, what it looked like in the film. They would also incorporate behind the scenes images as well, like seeing Bradley in the middle of getting his makeup done become the iconic Pinhead. They even go about talking about how they did that makeup, which is kind of cool as well. So this is a documentary I would highly recommend to anybody who's a fan of these films. There's some interesting information here that helps to deepen the experience and maybe even get more appreciation for what it did as well. So I give my highest rating here for a documentary, as I'm coming in for Leviathan, 8 out of 10. Then my last mini review here is going to be for The Darkside of Society from 2023. This is written and directed by Larry Wade Carroll. This features Screaming Mad George, David Gregory, and John Gilead. But this is really more about the screenwriter Zeph E. Daniel, aka Woody Keith. So like I said, documentary from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.6 on IMDb, and probably about a half rating over on Letterboxd, which is kind of crazy, but screenwriter Zeph E. Daniel, formerly known as Woody Keith, stepped out of his closet of dark secrets and told the incredible story behind the morbid, subversive film oddity of a film that would be of Society. So this is one that I got the chance to see thanks to Erica from Gold Dust PR. She reached out to see if I wanted to check out a screener for review. Now, I've seen Society once, so I was intrigued to learn more about this, but what made me nervous is that when I added it to my watch list, saw a lot of people were very critical. I still wanted to watch this to form my own opinion. So this is interesting the way it starts off. We hear some important voices in the film community, critics like Alan Jones and Anthony Timponi among them. There's also Gregory, who is the head of Severin Films, I believe. They're here to give an idea about Society and how it slid under the radar when it came out. It was a cult classic for how wild it is. We even hear from Screaming Mad George, who did the effects. It's from there that we get to the focus of this, the writer of the screenplay, Daniel. At the time he wrote the screenplay, he went under the name of Keith. We get to know his background and his beginnings. He was born into a powerful family in California. He didn't necessarily live up to their expectations, and that put a lot of pressure on him. Things all changed for him when he teamed up with Brian Usna. One of the interviews is here with these two hanging out. Now, what I have to say here is that things get heavy. Interestingly enough, one of my friends from the horror community, Lacey Liu, interviews him, as well as his wife, Patricia Brown. Zeph tells a horrific tale about how he believes he was molested as a child as part of a satanic ritual. He was then hospitalized. He then wrote specifics of his ordeal into the movie Society, and I think it's kind of interesting. They sync up here of things that he's telling us and showing those sequences in the film. Now, I will say that whatever abuse Zeph may have endured growing up, that is horrific. I'm not sure how much of what he's saying here I believe. I can't disprove anything that he has to say. I will just have issues here believing that his claims follow almost beat for beat with the satanic panic stories from the 1980s that were all mostly disproven. It also doesn't help your case when you're getting, when you're trying to get belief from me or other people when your wife throws out the term just randomly plandemic. It immediately made me see that they're conspiracy theorists. With how outrageous the things they're saying, there's no way you can prove them wrong, so in their mind, that means that they're right. I will stop there, though, and get off my soapbox. Then to shift gears, I will acknowledge that I cannot hold what they say against this film. I wanted more of a documentary about society. If they could have done more with that and still incorporated what Zeph claimed, that would help. I can't fault a film, though, for what I want and have to judge it on what I get. I'll be honest, I feel for him. I also felt he droned on about things longer than needed. So some interesting people here that were interviewed. I just kind of want more of that. Yuzna, George, and the film critics and historians have a wealth of knowledge that isn't even really tapped into much here. I will credit Yuzna, though, for being sympathetic to Zeph. He makes me realize that he's a great guy. This is well made. There were some sound issues with Richard Stanley's interview, but the rest of it was fine. So that interview also kind of feels out of place as they bring up that he's a survivor of sexual abuse, which fits, and I feel horrible for him as well. He has his own allegations about domestic abuse, which makes this then feel a little bit tone deaf. I will end this out by saying that the editing of the footage to match up stories that were being told was good. This makes what Zeph is saying feel more real. The focus here just isn't as interesting as you get a shorter documentary because of it for what we do end up getting. So my rating for the Darkside of Society is going to be a 4.5 out of 10. I believe this one is probably going to be hitting VOD and streaming here soon. So if you do want to take a chance on this one, I will go ahead and go ahead and check this out. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Hello, Stephen, my friend, my dear friend, my dead friend.
No, you are not dead, are you? Despite the fact that I signed your death certificate hours ago, they just think you're dead. But we know different, don't we, Stephen?
You see, the potency of this drug lasts only for about 24 hours. You're just coming out of it.
Now then, that's better.
That'll keep you quiet for another 24 hours.
Your eyes are open and you can see. You can hear everything.
Yes, and you can feel. But you can't make the slightest sound, and you can't move an eyelash. And here you lie, helpless, paralyzed, unable to shield yourself. what you want.
And for my first feature review is going to be The Crime of Dr. Crespi. This is from 1935, directed by John H. Auer. Now, this was written, there's a few different people here, so let me make sure I get this right, but Lou Goldberg and Edwin Olmsted did the screenplay. Now, they're also giving credit here to Auer doing the story, and then this is based, or it's at least subjected by the Edgar Allan Poe story of premature burial, which kind of gave something away the first time I was watching this, but I digress. So this stars Erich von Stroheim, Harriet Russell, and Dwight Fry, while also featuring the likes of Paul Guilfoyle, John Bond, Geraldine Kay, Jean Brooks, Betsy Berlin, Joe Verdi, Dean Raymond, and Laura Bullivant, something like that. So this is a crime horror mystery film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.5 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, or Synopsis. A crazed scientist invents a serum that induces a catatonic state, and anyone who gets the injection, he uses the serum to paralyze his enemies in order to bury them alive. So this is one I didn't know about in compiling my list of horror films for 1935. I found this one online. Now, what is interesting to me is that it was inspired by the Poe story. I'll be honest, knowing that and the specific one does give away a major plot point, I also don't know if that hurt my first watch, actually. I was more intrigued to see Fry, who co-starred. This is my Voyage to the Fives watch for the week, as well for the podcast, if you couldn't tell. So let's do some featured notes then before I jump into the movie itself, and I'll start with our director of Auer, who did 39 films. This is the first of his that I've seen, only one they did in horror. Moving down to the writing room, Auer also helped with the story. He has 2 credits. It's the only one I've seen, only one in genre. Then there's Goldberg. This is his only feature. Same for Olmsted. Then let's discuss Poe as the original writer. He has 116 adaptations and features and 97 shorts. I've seen 22. 96 are in horror. Everything that I've seen falls in genre. I've seen the likes of The Mask of the Red Death, The Black Cat, multiple versions of that, House of Usher. The top 3 that I haven't yet are Flanagan's version of Usher, the 1928 take on that tale, and The Haunted Palace, which I'm guessing might be the same exact story too, but I don't know offhand. Moving over to our cast, I'll start with Stroheim, or von Stroheim. He was in 71 motion pictures and 3 shorts. I've seen 3. Not horror, I've seen Grand Illusion. He's been in 3 in the genre. I've seen this and The Lady and the Monster, which I think was from last year that I watched this one. I think it's from like 34 or maybe 44. But I've not seen All Rain from 1952 yet. That's the only one. Fry is next. He's been brought up before, obviously. I've seen 11 of his 53 features for 20%. I've seen all of his feature films now in horror, which is 11. I'm just missing 2 documentaries, one about Dracula and Frankenstein, because he was in both of those series. Then the last one I look at is going to be Guilfoyle. He was in 97 movies and 6 shorts. I've seen him in 2 things. Not horror, I've seen The Grapes of Wrath. This is the only one that he's done in the genre that I have seen. So then, we jump into this movie here by looking through the windshield of a speeding ambulance. It is from here that we shift to a clinic. The head surgeon is Dr. Andre Crespi, portrayed by von Stroheim. Now, we then meet his team. This includes Dr. Thomas, who's Fry, Dr. John Arnold, portrayed by Guilfoyle, and then Nurse Rexford, portrayed by Kay. And there's also Nurse Gordon, portrayed by Brooks. Now, what I like here is, what I don't like, actually, both nurses seem to be almost like secretaries, waiting for calls to relay information, and just kind of like doorkeeping. So there's an interesting introduction here to each of these. Dr. Thomas is considered careless by his superior. There is a pilot who passed away, but Dr. Thomas isn't confident at the time of death. Dr. Crespi scolds him, making a rude remark to a nurse who gives him a report. Dr. Arnold inspires to take over the clinic, but he's afraid of Dr. Crespi hearing. We also see that he's up to an experiment of his own that he works alone on, and that would be Dr. Crespi himself. Now then, Estelle Gorham Ross, portrayed by Russell, keeps reaching out to Dr. Crespi, going as far as to come into clinic to see him. Apparently, Dr. Crespi was in love with her. His best friend, Dr. Stephen Ross, portrayed by Bond, didn't know. Now, these two are married, and he's been brooding ever since, and that would be Dr. Crespi. Dr. Ross was in a car accident, leaving him in a critical state. Crespi is said to be the only one who can save him. Estelle pleads for his help, but the doctor refuses her, or he tries to refuse her at first by ignoring her, but then he can't when she finally actually comes to him. So then our doctor has a devious plan. Andre visits his patient and something happens. His vitals drop and he's pronounced dead. Dr. Thomas finds it suspicious. We also see that things aren't as they seem, much like the synopsis says. So that's really my recap action of the characters. Where I want to start is that this film is borrowing elements from that I've seen in other films from the era. We have this, love triangle where Dr. Crespi is the odd one out. He isn't handling the rejection well. As everyone who has been passed over for a friend when it comes to the opposite sex, I get it. I even wanted to, hurt my friend because of it. Now, the big thing that you realize is that you can't tell somebody who they should like, so you just have to move on. Dr. Crespi can't do that. he can be upset. That's in his right, but his plan goes too far as murder isn't the answer. It also brings in his ethics and the oath that all medical professionals are supposed to be taken for taking care of patients. So the idea of playing God and the power that comes with it kind of factors in here as well. Now that I set that up, let's delve more into what we're getting. I'll go ahead and say that the synopsis as well as the opening credits reveal that it's based on this post story of premature burial. That's a terrifying idea. We get an updated take on this story as we go. This is something I've seen a handful of times, so I appreciate that. What is interesting here is that this might be the first cinematic version of it, as far as I know. Now, we also see the story used later in things like Short Night of Glass Dolls being one of them. Since it's a post story, I have to give him credit. Doing it on the film, though, might be helped as well. So, now, we're also getting a mad scientist story as well. There is a scene or two of Crespi who is working on this experiment before it is used. It's more heart-wrenching that he saves Dr. Ross only to put him in the suspended animation. This is a devious and diabolical because he comes to talk to Steven in the morgue. He wants him to suffer. Andre knows that Steven will be able to feel and experience his time like this, including being buried alive. The depravity to do this to somebody is great that we see this early into film history. So I want to finish out with the story elements to be subplots. There's one with Dr. Arnold who wants to take over Dr. Crespi's position. He's encouraged by one of the nurses who believes he is better suited. John is worried that Andre will hear him, which is good to set up that the staff fears repercussions. Dr. Thomas is also interesting as he isn't careful. We learned from the start that he had a patient pass away. There could be another one that needed additional care to survive. This strengthens the fear of Dr. Crespi when Dr. Thomas is berated in his office. He also he helps provide to Dr. Crespi's downfall for how he treats his peers. Other than that, I do have a slight soft spot here for Andre that Estelle cares for him, and we kind of soften him up a little bit there because of it, just not in the way he wants. I will then discuss the acting performances. The acting here is fine. Von Stroheim is diabolical as the titular doctor. The only issue that I have here is that we don't get much of a baseline. He just kind of comes off as mean outside of a couple scenes with Estelle. I do think softening him slightly would help. Fry and Guilfoyle work as these two employees who are faced with a dilemma of what to do. Brooks and Kay work as the two nurses. My issue there is that they're not given much to work with outside of just kind of comedy and love interest. Russell is solid as the catalyst for why Andre is after Dr. Ross. Bond is good in his role as well. The rest of the cast kind of just round this out for what was needed. All that's left then to be filmmaking. I do think that what we get here is limited. Seeing the inside of the Taft Clinic is fine. I do like its modern feel. We also get to see the inside of Ross's house very briefly and then this graveyard. But what we get here has limited effects. I'm glad they don't lean too much into science because I'm not sure we need it. It avoids needing to over-explain anything. Other than that, the soundtrack was fine without necessarily standing out. So there's a little bit of trivia here that I wanted to do next. The first thing is Fry received the highest billing of his career on this one, shot in 8 days. So there seems to be like a copyright issue here where the first one indicates that In Liberty's name was an error. Both copyright submissions were otherwise identical. It does seem like there was some other things that kind of went along with this one. I do know there are other versions of this include The Prelude, a 1927 British short written and directed and starring Castleton Knight. There's a 1 hour 1961 production on the anthology series thriller called Premature Burial, directed by Douglas Hay and starring Karloff, as in Boris Karloff. And then I figured this one. I think I've seen this one. Premature Burial, that was directed by Roger Corman, starring Ray Milland. So I guess the length of the film here was 5,944 feet. The film was given a B rating by the National Legion of Decency, morally objectable in part for all. Kind of fun fact there. So in conclusion, I do appreciate this one is doing an updated to the post story. We get a good villain here in Dr. Crespi. Credit to Von Stroheim for bringing the role to life. My problem is that he's too one-note for me. Softening it slightly makes it more terrifying. This early take on putting somebody in suspended animation to kill them is terrifying. The acting here works to support and push things where it ends up. It was made well enough. There isn't much to stand out, though, unfortunately. This is an interesting mystery, though, with a runtime just under an hour. It flies by, so credit there. I can only recommend this to fans of early cinema, and if you're looking for a little bit more of like the deeper cuts and everything like that. So my rating here for The Crime of Dr. Crespi going to be a 6 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily need to do anything there. Let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
Ridley? Are you okay?
It kind of felt like it was showing me something. I get this feeling I don't think we're supposed to be here.
The Leopolds donated this entire nature preserve. And they care about a lot of things, not just pharmaceuticals.
Fine. I will sit there and smile.
Sorry, we're late.
What happened? You walked from the airport or what?
It's perfect timing.
I need you to act like everything is fine.
Is there something in your car?
A lot of species in this area are rare. What exactly are we saying this is, though?
I think we know exactly what it is.
A horse-like mammalia.
With some sort of protrusion or growth.
It's a fucking unicorn.
I don't think I should be in swim shorts for this moment.
I don't think that we're supposed to have this.
We need to study it.
Whatever it is, it seems to be the cure for cancer.
Cancer? That's the biggest one.
An opportunity for greatness, for immortality.
I've never been so alive.
Dad, please just listen to me. We need to give the little one back. Okay, bad things will happen.
There are two of them?
They're gonna kill us.
I'll do whatever I have to take care of you. You'd retreat in the face of opportunity.
That horn was rather girthsome.
Picking up vibration.
Here's hoping we kill Bigfoot on the way home, huh?
And for my second feature review, Death of a Unicorn from 2025, written and directed by Alec Sharfman. And then this is starring Jenna Ortega, Paul Rudd, and Will Poulter, while also featuring the likes here of Téa Leoni, David Pasquesi, Anthony Kerrigan, Richard E. Grant, Jessica Hines, Denise Delgado, Catherine Irby, Sunita Mani, Steve Park, Nick Whitman, Max Drakowski, Nagastut Tushkahan, sorry, I'm gutted your name beyond belief, Christine Grace Scaro, and Tasha Lawrence. So this is a comedy, fantasy, horror, thriller, as well as dark comedy, dark fantasy, monster horror film that is from a co-production here of United States and Hungary. Currently sitting on a 6.0 on IMDb and a 2.8 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: a father and daughter accidentally hit and kill a unicorn while en route to a weekend retreat, where his billionaire boss seeks to exploit the creature's miraculous curative properties. So it's one that I was intrigued to see once I learned about it. I'm a big fan of Jenna Ortega, and it wasn't until I got closer to watching this that I realized it featured Paul Rudd, Will Poulter, Leoni, and Richard E. Grant. These are all actors that I've liked and seen in the past. What I've heard is that this one was absurd. It was also a comedy, which I'm not always the biggest fan of, but I knew that this one was one I couldn't miss ahead of doing my end-of-year list, especially because this is an A24 film. So then, let's do some featured notes. I'll start with the top. Sharfman as our director. This is his feature film debut. We have two assistant directors. First is Marco Siglia. He has done this for 10 films in one short. I've seen 3 of them. Not horror. He was for the remake of 39 Steps. I've seen both of his horror outputs with now this and Azrael. Then the other one would be Dora Takis. This is their feature film debut. Sharfman also wrote this. This is his debut there. Let's then go to the cast. First is Ortega. I've brought her up with the Scream film, so I've at 9 of her 30 features for 30%. Not horror would be something like Iron Man 3. In horror, she has 9. I've seen 7 for 77%. Like I've already kind of brought, I've seen her in the Scream films, this, X, Insidious 2, Babysitter Killer Queen, and Studio 666. Has one other one that I haven't, that it's out right now, of American Carnage. She's also slated to be the upcoming film called Acorns, but there's not a year set there. Then to Rudd, he's been in 105 films and 8 shorts. I've seen 29 of his works. I've seen The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Clueless, the Avengers stuff. He has 3 in horror, this and Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. The last one isn't out yet, as he's going to be in the Anaconda remake. He's also my 10th most seen actor of all time. Then over to Poulter. He has been in 27 features and 5 shorts. I've seen 5 of his works. He's been in The Revenant, We're the Millers, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Has 4 in genre. I've seen this and Midsommar. I have not seen The Little Stranger. He's also got an upcoming work that he'll be in of Rapture. Then I also want to give credit here to Grant. He's been in 137 films and 18 shorts. I've seen 7. Not horror would be Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, The Player, and Spice World. Now, Corpse Bride, he's in that. That's a borderline horror film to me. Has 6 officially in horror. I've seen this, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Warlock. I have not seen Spine of Night, Wildwood, or The Last Fashion Show. Let's jump into this one then. We start this film on an airplane. Ridley, played by Ortega, is in the window seat and she's sleeping. We then move over as she tries to move over to get comfortable on her father's shoulder of Elliot, portrayed by Rudd. He smiles, but he also drops paper that he's reading. This is the first of a series of unfortunate events. They can't get off as the stairs that were brought over don't fit. He also gets his paper and she ends up hitting her head on the armrest, waking her up. Now, the two are then in an SUV heading out to the boss's retreat. Ridley is secretly vaping. In order to do this, she has the window down. The pollen is getting to Elliot and he's sneezing. He's also congested. They lose service and he's trying to figure out where they're going. He's not paying attention to the road. He also doesn't see when they hit something. They look in the mirror and can't believe their eyes. It's a unicorn. The beast is still alive and in pain. Ridley notices the horn is glowing as she touches it. This causes a vivid vision. She goes on a surreal journey. This is cut short when her father hits the animal in the head with a tire iron. They then go to the mansion that brings them to Odell, portrayed by Grant. He's there with his wife Belinda, portrayed by Leone, and their son Shepard, portrayed by Poulter. I should point out that he doesn't know what he's doing in life and is just kind of coasting by. That would be Shepard. There's also Griff, portrayed by Anthony Kerrigan, and Shaw by Hines, who are the help. The reason that they're there is because Odell is dying. He wants to get things prepared for when he passes. Elliot is getting them set up, and he's also getting paid well for it. Odell has a family business as he wants to know more about Elliot and Ridley. She's uncomfortable with this, even more so because they have this dead animal in their car. It isn't as dead as they thought, though. The creature wrecks it. This goes about in an interesting discovery as well, is that Ridley's acne gets cleared up. Elliot no longer needs his glasses to read and his allergies are gone. It seems that the unicorn's blood has healing properties. It is then decided to see if it can cure Odell's cancer. Shepard also uses it as a drug, making changes within him. The problem, though, they're not the only one of these animals living here. They don't sit idly by. So let's leave my recap and I'll show the characters. What I want to start then would be the tone of the film. This is more of a comedy. That's not to say that it doesn't go to dark places that would put it into horror. I will say this concept is absurd. Unicorns are a mythical creature that I don't know a whole lot about. It is funny that nowadays they tend to be cuter and not seen in the way that we kind of get here. I would be curious to know if there's some specific folklore that this is borrowing from or just using a monster like this, since we haven't used it this way that I know of outside of like the brief scene in Cabin in the Woods. Either way, going to comedy doesn't ruin this. Now that I have the setup, let me kind of say here is that I'm not fully sure where this manner of this father-daughter duo are going to. It's interesting that it's never really kind of set up, I don't remember at least. If I have to guess, this is somewhere in the United Kingdom. That's probably more due to the majority of these legends that come from there about unicorns. Odell and his family have this mansion that is nestled next to a national forest, which would be a perfect place for a beast like this to live. It is protected, probably expansive, and they could hide from sight. It takes a while for them to arrive, or like for help to get there, and reinforce this as well. So it's from here that I'll start talking about the first aspect of commentary that is at the forefront here. We're seeing the corruption of humanity. Elliot and Ridley accidentally kill this animal, and they're doing this. They're trying to do right by putting it out of its misery. This is a mythical creature, though, so it doesn't stay that way. It is then that the blood gets on them, and they realize it can heal. Elliot wants to set his daughter up for life. There is something deeper with what happened to his wife, Ridley's mother. He wants to help Odell, but it's when they see that it works that they want to exploit it. They're told by this team of doctors that are studying it that there's only a finite amount. That's when they are selling it to the highest bidder. This is looking at the nature of capitalism, even the medical profession, which is for profit when it shouldn't be. I then want to shift over to talk about this as a horror film. From this opening scene with the unicorn getting hit, and then we see it's bloody. The film then plays almost like a slasher film. We get this initial kill, get to know our characters before other unicorns show up to get their revenge. There is a dark approach here. These look cute until you get a deeper look at them. Their horns aren't perfect. They did a great job at designing them to look like they might in nature. I did appreciate the care there. There are other unicorns that show up and just gets kind of like bloody mayhem. I'll then just say here that the practical effects were well done. Once the attacks start, we get them at good intervals as the human fights back. I'll then discuss the rest of the filmmaking. The cinematography and framing were good. They do hide the seams here well. I already have kind of said that I enjoyed those practical effects, but there are a lot of CGI as well. I can't fully fault the film because I'm not sure how else you would do this to bring these mythical creatures to life. If they went animatronic, it would have been expensive, and it might have limited what they could do, where CGI gives them a little more freedom. I don't love it, but I understand the soundtrack also fits for what was needed. Alright then, I just have acting before I go over to some trivia, and I will say that our main cast is good. I like Ortega, who's our expert. It feels convenient that her mother was a history professor or something along these lines. She just so happens to get trapped in the situation, but I can roll with it. She plays well off Rudd, who is solid as her father. I do like him being a great character. He promised his wife that he would take care of Ridley and that she'd never want for anything. He's trying to set her up by selling his soul for money. I felt that on a personal level as a father, and this would obviously be metaphorically. Grant and Leone were solid as these rich parents. They coddle Poulter's character. They also are despicable, but it fits for what was needed. I like Kerrigan and Hines as well. Other than that, Monty, Park, and the rest of the cast kind of just round this out for what was needed. So I'm not going to do all this trivia just because a lot of it is very wordy, but Griff internalized much of his frustrations from his report before finally letting loose, but the part allowed Kerrigan the chance to dive deeper into the physical and silent comedy. It seems like a lot of simple, but you really do need to create body language that's telling a story. So we watched a lot of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, which makes a whole lot of sense there. Scarfman happened to initiate the casting of Ortega right before her smash hit Netflix series Wednesday launched her in the stratosphere. Kind of cool there. The sensors used by the scientists to detect the presence of the creature make the same sound as the motion trackers and aliens. I kind of thought that might have been. There could be also a little bit here of a nod to Alien or Aliens or any of those ones because Ridley being the main character here. Paul Rudd and Leone both guest starred in Season 4 of Only Murders in the Building. And an origami unicorn is created in Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott, who shared the same name as Jenna Ortega's character in this film here. So in conclusion, this is a fun horror film. It is absurd with its premise, but I do like how it builds whimsical things that also get played straight. This has a good balance. What helps is our cast. Ortega, Rudd, Poulter, Grant, and Leone carry this film. They can do comedy, but they can also be straightforward in this film, and the rest of the cast were kind of good in support. This goes brutally with its effects, and that made me laugh. This is well made with its practical cinematography and framing leading the way. I don't love all the CGI, but I also get that there really isn't any other way they could do it. I'll say that I tried to temper my expectations coming in. I enjoyed my time, and I do plan on trying to give this a rewatch before doing my end-of-year list as well. So my rating here for Death of a Unicorn is going to be a 7 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily think I need to do anything there, so let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
What's up, VHS heads? I'm Matt. Join me and my two broskies, Chris and Dave, on our movie comparison podcast, The VHS Abyss, putting two movies from the golden age of cinema against each other. Whether it's a teenage soldier head-to-head, like Red Dawn versus Toy Soldiers, or simply picking two from a back catalogue of icons of the VHS era, like Roddy Piper or Jamie Lee Curtis. Whatever link we can find between two films, we've got you covered. With facts, gaffes and plenty of laughs along the way, join us on all podcast platforms to discover who will be crowned champion of the episode. We are the VHS Abyss. Whether it's a hit or a miss, we love to reminisce.
And welcome back one last time here, and just to kind of go through my social medias and stuff, if you'd like to send me an email, you can send that at journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. You can send me any sort of feedback, or if you have any questions or anything, go ahead and shoot them there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Or if you want to send me any screener links or anything like that, anything podcast related, you can send it via that way. If you'd like to read any of the written reviews, I'll direct you to Reviews of the Dead, and that's horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to become friends with me on Facebook, I'm David Michigan Garrett Jr. On Twitter, I'm Buckeye from Mish. Letterboxd, I'm David OSU. On Instagram, I'm David OSU87. On Threads, I'm David OSU87. And then Journey with a Cinephile has its own Instagram at Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. Now, all of these ones I will be sharing like my ratings on whatnot. I know for Letterboxd, all of the reviews are going to be for horror and non-horror alike. Instagram I will be sharing over there is my different like posters and everything for things that I'm reviewing. My personal account, you might see some personal pictures every now and then if I can remember to take them. And then, kind of same thing for Threads. And then Journey with a Cinephile is going to be more of just kind of posting podcast-related different stuff over there. And I'll also direct you to the Nightclub Discord channel, as I have a little section over there where we have some good conversations. I post all of my reviews and any new podcast episodes or some of the things I'm watching when I actually have time to post that. So keep an eye out over there, and I'll have the link for that and everything else in the show notes there. And then I'm also going to direct you, a way that you can actually listen to the show is going to be through the Pod Nation TV. This is a streaming service and everything like that. There will be a link in the blog posts for all of my episodes, so if you'd like to listen to it that way. It's kind of a cool little thing. You can definitely do that through like Roku TV, and there's some other apps for it as well, just as another way for you to consume this podcast if you decide to. There's also a lot of other great shows that are on that network as well. And then for my next episode here, going to be 289. This is going to be another My Voyage to the Fives episodes. The two feature reviews I'm going to be doing is I already watched this one, and it's on Shudder now, of The Ugly Stepsisters. This is one I got a press release for earlier in the year, so I was intrigued, went on my list of ones to check out. So now that it's available, I wanted to see that one. And I'm going to pair this up with Condemned to Live. This one I believe is on Tubi. Not sure what the through line will be as of yet, but I'll figure that out. And then my Voyage to the Fives rewatch. I have not watched Silver Bullet in years, so I'm going to check that out. Then I'm also going to give a rewatch to Companion, and then I'll have more mini reviews to kind of go along with that as well. So I don't think there's anything else I need to say here outside of that. Wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending